Hello everyone, Max here with Fiction Rant to talk to you all about one of the biggest franchise rivalries ever. Star Trek versus Star Wars. Personally been a huge fan of both these universes for as long as I can remember, but every time I hear the playground debate on who would beat up who, it always devolves into a popularity contest where nobody does any research. They just cite what examples they can think of at the time, compare them, and then yell at each other about who wins because that's their favorite. I want to take a more piecemeal approach to the debate though by going through 6 major categories and discussing each in depth with their own video, and then have a final matchup where we can weigh all the factors against each other to get a better idea of who would actually quote-unquote win. This video will be part 1, but won't actually start the debate. This video will be for the purpose of establishing exactly what we're comparing. We need to set some limitations on the conversation, otherwise we get bogged down in semantics and caveats. First of all, the simplest caveat, this will be strictly a comparison of the Star Trek United Federation of Planets faction, circa around the Dominion War, versus the Star Wars Galactic Empire during the time period of Return of the Jedi. For Star Trek, this is because at this point there's plenty of variety of ships on display, their capabilities are shown relatively clearly both in and out of combat, and there's actually information regarding numbers of ships available. For Star Wars, this is because this time period represents the height of power for the Galactic Empire. They have a sizable Star Destroyer fleet, including Super Star Destroyers, as well as a Death Star superweapon and legions of stormtroopers. I'm setting each side at these points in their respective histories because otherwise you really can't compare them at all. Star Wars takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and Star Trek takes place in the future. So really, if they encountered each other at contemporary times, then either nothing in the Federation would exist yet, and you would be having the Empire fighting cavemen, or you'd advance to the Dominion War and the Empire would have fallen millennia ago. I'm limiting the factions involved for similar reasons. The Empire, for Star Wars, is the biggest, baddest faction we ever really get to see, except for maybe some defunct Legends content that really is badly explained and or doesn't exist anymore, so Empire seems like a good faction to be able to do a honest comparison. For Star Trek, the Federation is the least ambiguous faction, they being the faction that is the subject of every one of the shows and movies, and they're also the most well explained in terms of capabilities and limitations. This also gets around the messy debate that assumes that every faction in the Star Wars universe unites against every faction in the Star Trek universe, and somehow neither faction dissolves into infighting. This would apparently give the Empire a sizable terrain advantage, seeing as they control most of the galaxy, whereas the Federation is in its own little corner. But I'm going to get around that particular issue by saying that this entire conflict, for the comparison's sake, takes place in neither galaxy, but everything still works. So that'll become more important later as I discuss the different aspects of their technology, but suffice to say, neither faction already has territorial holdings in this particular galaxy. We're just basically creating a battleground for them. I'm also limiting the factions involved because it eliminates the mic drop moments when godlike beings show up. If the entirety of the Star Trek universe showed up against the entirety of the Star Wars universe, then Q would just snap his fingers and the war would be over and Star Trek would win because he's basically God. So, fortunately for the purposes of this debate, Q is not a member of Starfleet in the Federation, so his omnipotence is not a factor. There's other reasons to limit the debate in this way, but suffice to say, I think this is the debate that most people are usually having when it comes to the who would win debate. So Dominion War era Starfleet versus Death Star 2 era Empire is what I'm going to discuss. Another limitation is that we're only really going to discuss each faction with the technologies and capabilities that they typically use during their respective eras. So Star Trek doesn't get Spore Drive, and Star Wars doesn't get legions of Force-using Sith troops. So, for the purposes of this debate, I will be doing 6 follow-up videos, each covering a different aspect of the conflict. Those will be speed, weapons, defenses, numbers, unique advantages, and tactics. Then I'll finally finish up with a conclusion video where I give my thoughts on who I think would win in a variety of different scenarios. The scenarios I'd like to talk about are a one-on-one ship battle of equivalent ships, a one-on-one troop battle, a fleet battle, an army battle, and who could conquer our made-up galaxy the fastest. Each part will go in depth, comparing each factor, faction versus faction. At the end, I'll give my thoughts on who wins in each scenario. So yeah, I'll compare Star Trek versus Star Wars on all these criteria in their own videos, so I'll have time to go in depth with all of them and then do a final video to give a quick summary of each category and give my final thoughts based on the factors considered together. For each section, please comment on if you agree, disagree, think I'm missing something important, or if you think I've made good points, or maybe you've learned something. Thanks everyone, and see you all in the next video. Until next time, live long and prosper, and may the Force be with you.